Good morning, Excellence family. Today is Mortgage Monday, and we have the opportunity to catch up with our loan officer, Madeleine King. Good morning, Madeleine. How are you?
Doing well, Christina. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. Trying to dodge the storm, right? Pretty much the whole state of Florida. As we get into hurricane season, we're dodging storms.
Mhm.
But today we wanted to just take a moment, catch up with you, get a refresher on basics as it comes to the borrowers out there, your agents out there that you have clients looking to purchase a home. We want to get back into Mortgage 101. What are some of the basics, principal things that we need as borrowers to qualify on the mortgage front?
Awesome. That's a great topic, Christina, because we all get so wrapped up in the day to day, and on this side, I know the routine. I know where I need to place a client once I have the initial interview. But a lot of that stuff, when our agent partners are out there in the field talking to potential buyers, that it's not what they do. It's not what they are accustomed to doing and going through that process. And they do the correct thing by referring them to me, so that we can, begin the pre-approval process. But the basics apply to all of the borrowers across the board when we're talking about regular, either conforming or conventional, as well as FHA. Okay, this does not pertain to non-conforming loans, because that's a different, or commercial loans, because those are a little bit different. But when it comes to just your regular, either FHA loan or conventional loan, they're all going to have the same basic needs, which are a 2-year work history. And that doesn't mean they have to be employed in the same job for 2 years. It's obviously makes them a little bit stronger buyer if they are, but they can have a couple of different jobs, but we still need a 2-year history of employment. So that's important. So they, sometimes you have a high school student who's, 19 or 20 and maybe getting a gift, but he doesn't have a 2-year work history, and simply we cannot do the loan. It's as simple as that. We do need to have a 2-year work history. Same thing goes for credit. If you have no credit, that is something that we can do with FHA, but not necessarily with conventional. We have to find alternative forms of credit, and that can get a little bit tricky sometimes. So you also do need to have credit as well. And they are looking for 24 months of credit history. The same thing for assets. Now with assets, back in the day, you didn't need to have the down payment on your own. Excuse me, reverse that. You did need to have the down payment on your own. Nowadays, you don't. You can receive it as a gift. So that is a huge benefit as well. But those 3 basic things: you need credit, income, ability to repay the loan, and a 2-year history of employment, and then the assets. So with that said, then there's a lot of variables that go into that as well. And most of the time we're talking about FHA and conventional and the differences between the two. And that's when I have the initial conversation with the borrower that we can determine which is going to be the best option. What may seem to be low, this is going to definitely be a conventional loan. Then we find out, oh, we have some employment gaps and we have to go this route or the other. Or the credit is a little bit lower than we were expecting, or we don't have sufficient credit on the history, even though the score is 680. So there's a lot of different factors that play in, and that's where, the initial conversation with the client really determines the best route to proceed when we're going to do the purchase. It's not just a matter of the whether they have a mortgage insurance or not. That's usually the first difference, is that people will, believe that, okay, well, we're going to have a higher mortgage insurance with this FHA. It's not necessarily the case, especially when you have a little bit lower credit scores. But that's what we do. We figure out, okay, what's going to be the best scenario and option for the borrower, because there are a few differences out there. But the basics are important: the 2-year work history, 2-year credit, and assets. Of course, the assets can be a gift. And then we come into the property. I don't want to overwhelm, but at the same time, the property is important when you're doing a conventional or an FHA. If the property looks to be in a little bit of disrepair,
Mm.
you may want to consider avoiding an FHA transaction because they are a little bit more strict with FHA. So you would have to go with a conventional where they're just a little more lenient on that. And then you have to find a balance between if we can take the borrower conventional because of the property, or if we have to find another property because the borrower has to go FHA. But that's what we do. We find the best possible solution.
I think that's why it's so important, team out there, to just run a scenario by us. Madeleine can help talk with the borrower, find out what are their goals, what is the specific properties are going to work for them, what could be some possible alternatives. Something you mentioned about employment gaps. What if you've had someone working 2 years, but they changed jobs and they had like a few weeks in between or a month? Is there a certain time frame that they, let's say, have in between job changes that is acceptable, or does it have to be back to back with no gap employment?
No, not necessarily. With FHA, if you have a higher than a 6-month employment gap, then I need a prior 2-year work history before the employment gap. So you may have started to work in 2021, but then you were off for 6 months. If you don't have a prior 2-year work history prior to the employment gap, then that becomes an issue with FHA. So, there's just a lot of different things that we need to look at. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do it. There are, extenuating circumstances, and there's sometimes a manual underwrite that we can go with and see what we could do. There are exceptions, but for the norm, that's one of the things that we look at when we have an employment gap, if we need to switch it to conventional because of the employment gap issue. So, you just need to look at the big picture and see. And we don't expect that the borrower is going to come with all of these things prepared when I initially meet with them. But it's important to know if you have someone who's just, and we do get these often where the parents are ready to buy the home for their child who has just finished high school, and they're going to help them with the down payment, but I only have 1 year history. And it's like, well, it's great that this person is going to be able to buy a home right out of high school or a year after high school, but I just can't do it because I don't have an employment history. But there are other scenarios where we can still make that happen, but it's just going to be a different transaction, and we may have to get the parents on the loan as well, but that also brings in their credit and their debt. So, but those are things that we look at just to see how we can make the purchase the best possible solution.
And we appreciate that. I mean, I think that's the key here, is that we can always talk through scenarios. We do have Madeleine available for our agents exclusively, where we can ask her to run the scenario for us, what's going to fly, what's not going to fly, so that your buyers can go out confidently and make offers and know that they have the financing to back it up. Those key things, the assets, the employment, the credit, there's certain tickets to entry that we need to be able to have a foundation from which to start planning and talking through loan scenarios. And we just do want to remind you that we have this whole wealth of knowledge available. There are so many programs and products available. That's why we always suggest talking through a scenario, loan consultation. If your borrower's not ready to apply, but you want to talk through scenarios, please reach out to us. Madeleine, is there anything else pertinent that we need to know as a credit basic out there?
Just keep in mind that the credit, there was a lot of instability because of COVID. We're still dealing with some of those repercussions where late payments were waived because of the COVID pandemic that happened, and they were giving a lot of passes on some late payments. But after the 2020 and 2021, there really isn't that wasn't the issue anymore. So some people are relying on, the COVID, got me, with these late payments and stuff, but that was only for 2020 and some part of 2021. So we have to keep that in mind with our buyers as well. And you pointed out that with credit, we also will help them if they're not ready to purchase, but we'll get them on their way. We'll let them know. I mean, we're not a credit repair agency by all means, but we'll let them know these are the things that is keeping your credit down, and this is what you need to do to be able to be ready in 6 months or in 8 months. So
that's great to hear, because not everybody's ready today, but they have a plan in place. And I've seen many times where you've put that plan in place and we've been able to come full circle and help that client. You know, the dream of homeownership becomes real, and we are here every step of the way to help them get there, to help you get there for your buyers. Madeleine, I thank you so much for taking the time with us today to talk about these credit basics. They're very important: assets, income, credit. And of course, there are all these little details involved in there, but those are the basics. We do have a link available to all of our agents, excellencemortgage.com/apply, that enables you to book a time on Madeleine's calendar. You could be a part of the call. It could be a Zoom call, or basically you can engage with us in any way, by phone, by email, but the ideal way is going to be through excellencemortgage.com/apply. That takes you straight to Madeleine's calendar. You can book a consultation, or you can actually book a time to apply. So we highly encourage that before setting on the home ownership journey, so you have a plan in place. Madeleine, thank you so much for your time today.
my pleasure. Thank
It's
you.
always wonderful, always so much to know and learn about mortgage. So we are here to help. Don't hesitate to reach out, and we wish you a wonderful week ahead. Thank you, everybody.
Guys, have a great week.